at some point they're going to say, you know what, I don't quite understand this, I need clarification. That wouldn't have been allowed, and you wouldn't be able to qualify to get the job. That would have shut out everybody outside of the Ottawa-Montreal triangle. And it would have shut out a lot of people in those areas as well. Francophones were upset at that bill. You're from Quebec, you're from Sherbrooke, you're from Chicoutimi, up in northern Quebec. What are the chances that your English, maybe you speak English well enough to get along when you go on vacation to Florida or you go to visit the rest of Canada, but what are the chances that your English is good enough to sit through a Supreme Court constitutional case on Crown land patents, let's say? Probably not very good. I bring that up because, as I say, you've got allies out there. Most of my media colleagues, by the way, who talk about the need for party leaders to be bilingual and the need for the Auditor General to be bilingual, can't speak both languages. And if any of you remember, when the Harper government came in and there were complaints that they weren't holding press conferences in the usual place, which is the National Press Theatre, they hold them in the foyer, the House of Commons. The Prime Minister wanted the visual backdrop of the beautiful doors of the House of Commons when he spoke to the media. Because it's all about TV, it's all about optics. He said, this is a better backdrop than great panels. It would essentially be, do you want the doors of the House of Commons or that wall? And no offense to that wall, it's lovely for where we are, but you're the Prime Minister speaking of the country, which will you choose? So he chose the foyer doors. They were angry not because you should be holding it at the National Press Theatre, they were angry because they didn't have their instantaneous translation. You don't see the reporters with the earpieces on who then turn around and denounce people for not being bilingual enough. They don't want you to know that anyway. Now I started talking about, out talking about children, what they learn and what we teach them. As I said, I don't think telling them to grow up and get a government job is what we should be teaching them. Canada is a land built by entrepreneurs. People willing to take a risk, people willing to strike out on their own, set up their own shop. Some of them were people like Timothy Eaton and grew to be a great big empire, but Timothy Eaton started out with nothing. And his descendants made sure that the company ended that way as well. Same with the Bronfmans and Seagrams. You know, these guys started out with nothing and then they leave it to their descendants and they learn how to kill it pretty quickly. When the country was still young, there were some big players, people like Hudson's Bay, which, by the way, everyone talks about it being a great Canadian company. It's had its headquarters in Canada less time than I've been alive. It's an English company. But there was a group of men from Montreal who said, you know what, I'm tired of all these guys in London getting all the business, we're going to strike out on our own. And they formed the Northwest Company and they successfully challenged them. That's our Canadian history. Our Canadian history is not always about setting up a government program. That's the 1960s Canada. Our tradition, as I always say on my TV show, our history did not start in 1967, it didn't even start in 1867, it started before that. And you've got to reclaim that to know how to continue on the fights. If we are a nation of entrepreneurs, you cannot have the government getting involved and telling you how you can run your business, at least not yet, not in Ontario. In Quebec they do. In Quebec, there are dentists who have been told your French isn't good enough to pull people's teeth, and they try and take away your license to practice. This is an immigrant dentist in Elmer. In Montreal, they've had, they wonder why they have trouble keeping immigrants. They had I believe it was a Pakistani immigrant, came over, and he bought a convenience store. He thought, this is Canada, I've got an opportunity now, I'm going to strike out. He's employing people, but he's also working there himself. They said, your French isn't good enough, you have to sell your store or hire people. He said, my margins aren't good enough to hire staff here at the level you want me to all the time. They said, then you've got to sell your store. We've got to stop that sort of thing from coming. Because right now they can't force you to speak either language, and you know what? If you only want to speak French in your business, and I don't want to speak French, I won't go there. If you only want to speak English and I don't want to speak English, I want to be served in French, I won't go in there. I shouldn't be able to force you to serve me in the language you want. If you're stupid and you want to lose customers, that's how you'll act. But most people aren't that stupid, despite what government and politicians think. We are not that stupid, and people will figure it out. People in this area have been figuring it out with 2 languages for a very, very long time. And they've been getting along, for the most part, just fine.
Are you not always fighting a bureaucrat though, Brian, somewhere along the line?
You're always fighting bureaucrats, and that's why we've got to work against government overreach, which is the 3rd point. Your sign bylaw out here is ridiculous. And it should be shot down on principle. Why should a government be able to tell me what I put on my sign? In Toronto, there's a mall, I think it's called the Pacific Mall in Markham. Every sign's in Chinese. If I don't want to go in there, I don't have to. If I want to go in there, because it's kind of neat, I might not know everything that's on sale, but it'd be interesting to see. And if they want my business, they'll speak English, which is the majority language in the area. But they're catering to a Chinese market. So all the signs are in Chinese. There is some English, but it's mostly Chinese. Should the government, the city government or the provincial government, be able to say to them, you're in Ontario, put up an English sign? You shouldn't be allowed to. If I want to put up a sign all in German, I should be allowed to. It doesn't matter. It is my business, it is my property, you will keep your nose out of it. But right now, government seems to think that they know so much more. And Jack, I really hope that you don't get infected with this when you're down. Take a shower every day. Do what you have to. Change your socks often. But government seems to think they know how to run your life better than you do. Bureaucrats seem to think they know how to run your life better than you do. From knowing how you should spend your money to what you should spend your money on, to being a co-parent to your children. Do you know that we are still the only media outlet that ran with that? The National Post a little bit, had some op-eds on that. But Sun Media is the only one that's been running. If you don't know this story, does everyone know what I'm talking about? The government saying they're co-parents? I see a couple people saying no. There was a father went to pick up one of his kids at school in Kitchener. Father of 4. His 4-year-old daughter had drawn a gun on a whiteboard in class. And the teacher said, well, what's that? That's Daddy. He uses the gun to shoot bad guys and monsters. That set off alarm bells. So the teacher called in Children's Aid. Children's Aid called in the police. The man was greeted by 3 police officers when he showed up to pick up his daughter from school. It's a school that he and his family have been involved with for a long time. The principal knows him. The teachers know him. He's got a 5th child on the way. His wife was at home with their 15-month-old. They appear by all means, you know, he's 26, looks like he had some run-ins with the law when he was younger, but appears to be an upstanding guy now. He goes into schools and teaches people the dangers of drugs. He's a motivational speaker. So he's employed at times by these same school boards. They called Children's Aid on him. He was arrested. He was strip searched. His children were taken away from him and his wife. His wife was interrogated as well. His home was searched, we believe, before they had a warrant. Because his daughter drew a gun at school. The reaction of Child Services is we would do it all again the same tomorrow. The school board, in an interview with our reporter Chris Sims said, well, we care about these children because we are co-parents. No, you're not. As Nick said, when you're paying for his 18-year-old to, you know, my boys aren't there yet. They're not eating that much. They're 11 and 8. They're not eating that much. But when you are there in the middle of the night, when you are taking them to the doctor's office, when you are there for the school plays, then you are a parent, if I say you are. But you are not a co-parent. You are an educator. And believe me, I heard from lots of principals and teachers outraged by that. But that is the idea going through much of the bureaucracy. And step by step they are creeping in. And this, again, relates to language fairness. If they can tell you that they are your child's co-parent, why can't they tell you what sign is on what language is on your sign? Why can't they tell you what you have to speak in your own business? Why can't they tell you just about everything else you do in your life? They're your kid's co-parent. Why can't they run your life as well? All these little bits of intrusion seem unrelated, but they are related because they are erosions of your